So, we've reached the penultimate episode for this season of My Hero Academia Vigilantes, and let's just say that this was probably another banger of an episode, from the animation to the major additions made to this episode. All of that and more we're going to be talking about in this video because, hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga and I'm here to do my breakdown and review for My Hero Academia Vigilantes Season 2, Episode 12. And like I said, there's a lot that we actually need to break down in this episode and review, so we're just gonna dive right into it. But before we do that, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, to subscribe to my YouTube channel where I make My Hero Academia and related adjacent content. So if that's something that you're looking for and you want to see more of it, subscribe. And without the way, let's dive right into the breakdown. And start off, the first thing that we need to tackle is the title of the episode, which is This Is a Hero, which takes its name from Manga chapter 55, which was initially titled Number 1 Hero, but was amended for the volume release. And this episode actually covers material from chapter 54, 55, 56, and the first 8 pages of chapter 57. And what's interesting about this episode is how this episode starts off very differently from the manga material that it's pulling from. Because the episode begins with Tsukachi calling All Might over his phone, who was in a meeting in Might Tower, and he's calling All Might to help with the incident happening at the Sky Egg. And this start to the episode actually differs from the manga by omitting the first page of chapter 54, which is actually a scene in a moment that happens before the Sky Egg's collapse, where Eraserhead argues with Tsukachi about calling All Might. So that's one very small change that seems very inconsequential, but there is a lot of these in this entire episode moving forward. For example, another seemingly inconsequential change is allegedly when All Might is answering the phone call from Tsukachi, and he makes a comment in the manga how Tsukachi typically texts and doesn't really call. However, in the anime, it seems as if this line may seemingly be cut off. However, in the actual translations or subtitles of the episode, we see that the line is actually kept in. So this may be a difference between the Japanese language and the actual subtitles for this episode. But even with that, we still get a few more added changes to the anime. For instance, we have the anime adding to the hero's reaction of the Sky Egg falling by showing in the anime all of the heroes like in the manga, but the anime adding Best Jeanist trying to keep the Sky Egg from falling even though he fails. Which is a small addition, really just showing that the heroes aren't just gonna stand around and see something in danger and just allow it to happen for the most part, but in this case, it wasn't successful for Best Jeanist. But something else that the anime does is that it cuts a close-up panel of some kids crying. Also, something else that I almost forgot to bring up is how in the anime, alongside that panel of the kids being cut, we also get a few pro heroes also being cut when the Sky Egg explodes, which includes Uwabami, as well as Manual, Wash, and even Death Arms. So yeah, those characters were actually cut from this episode, or at least the start of this episode, so that's something that I wanted to bring up. And one final change made to the beginning of the episode is how the episode starts off with the support column for the Sky Egg actually exploding during the call in the manga, while it has already happened in the anime. And with all of these changes happening before the intro even begins to roll, we begin to leave the start of the episode with the scarred-faced villain, who I will be referring to as number 6, since we get the name, quote-unquote, properly revealed in this episode, as we see that his plan is coming together. But yeah, this first part of the episode is going to be very indicative for what the rest of this episode is going to be. So this is going to be a longer episode because there's a lot that we need to talk about and break down. Because even when we finally finish the opening for this episode, we get a brand new title card titled Deus Ex Machina, which is explained on the screen and pretty much is an explanation of a problem being solved in a very contrived and forced way. And the reasoning why the title was changed is because in this episode, the Deus Ex Machina is actually All Might appearing on the scene and saving the day. And it's not a literal Deus Ex Machina because we know that All Might exists in the world and is known as the greatest hero, but the fact of the matter is that within the world, he feels like a solution to a problem that is very much unsolvable due to how strong he is. But now that we're speaking on All Might as a Deus Ex Machina, this is where we probably get the best scene of this entire series of My Hero Academia Vigilantes, of All Might saving the day by the request of Tsukachi, his best friend, who is doing this and asking him to save his little sister. And how this entire scene has a lot of great changes and additions to it that make it even more amazing than it was in the manga. Because we start off with the actual flashback, like in the manga, where Naomasa, as he's referred to as now in the flashback, learns that his sister went to the hospital with his mom, and they learn that she has a quirk that allows her to somewhat read minds. And that throughout the flashback, Makoto seems to be using her quirk to try and figure out if her brother is lying or telling the truth. And how this very much annoys Tsukachi due to his more stoic state. And how in the scene, not much is actually changed. However, what is changed, or more specifically added, really makes this scene even more impactful. Because the scene, like I said, plays out like in the manga with small changes. Those changes are that the anime shows and adds a scene of Makoto being sad that her brother said that he hated her, which was not in the manga. However, this small addition adds to the end of the flashback as well, where the anime adds Makoto still clinging to her brother and knowing that he is lying due to her ability to detect lies via touch. And this makes sense because it shows that while yes, Tsukachi is being a little bit harsh at this moment, that does not cover up the fact that he still very much loves his sister and that his sister very much knows that, whether or not she knows that he's lying about it, which eventually leads to the impactful moment of him telling All Might that he wants her to come to their location to make sure his sister is safe, which leads to the moment of All Might leaving his building to go and save the day. And this entire sequence where we have All Might saving everyone from the Sky Egg in the anime was done immaculately. Because the anime very much adds and subtracts things from the sequence. For starters, the anime actually extends the sequence of All Might arriving to the scene by showing how fast he could go by more or less breaking the sound barrier just from leaping from the building that he started from. As well as the anime adds a trail of colors when he's flying through the air, which is supposed to be a representation of One for All, as well as the fact that at this moment, it's 5 years from the start of My Hero Academia proper, where he hasn't given Deku or anyone his One for All quirk yet, so he's using it at full force. And One for All has always been depicted as a more rainbow of colors. Then, we do have the anime, very much like in the manga, showing All Might slowing down the fall of the Sky Egg, as well as clearing the area and saving pets and people in the surrounding area. But what's also cool about the sequence is that when he's clearing the area with a punch, we see the gust of air clearing the area while having so much force that the air pressure actually comes back up and pushes on the Sky Egg as a way of keeping it airborne a little bit longer, as All Might does everything he needs to do before he's able to get underneath it and in a way place it down safely. So this is a very great addition made to this to make it a lot more dynamic, but there are still a lot more changes and additions made. For instance, they very much expand on the sequence of everyone reacting to All Might saving the Sky Egg by having everyone outside chanting All Might, All Might, which indirectly secures and gives confidence to everyone inside of the Sky Egg that All Might was the one that made sure that they were safe and sound. As well as something else that happens is that within this episode, there's a lot of rearrangement of scenes that were different between the anime and the manga. For instance, the scenes that get rearranged are scenes involving Aizawa and Tsukachi seeing All Might. As well as with those rearrangements, we also see that the anime adds a lot more reaction shots of the people as well as the heroes reacting to All Might saving the day. Now you may be thinking that may be all of the changes that we have, but there are still a few more left to go. One of them is an example of how the anime actually doesn't include All Might stopping to get a picture taken while the Sky Egg is falling. which makes sense because that's not the type of character All Might is. As well as a difference in the manga between the anime and manga is when Captain Celebrity and Koichi are falling and then caught by All Might, the manga actually shows All Might landing with Captain Celebrity and Koichi shaking Captain Celebrity's hand, as well as Koichi asking for and receiving an autograph from All Might. However, in the anime, their landing isn't shown. Koichi asks for an autograph while they're still in the air, and shortly afterwards, Koichi shows off his signed hoodie, with Captain Celebrity remarking how he wasn't as excited for Captain Celebrity's autograph when he first gave it to Koichi. And then that's pretty much it for the differences with this scene, as we see that everyone is very much safe and sound, as the heroes as well as Pop and the rest of the Naru Fest individuals try to make sure that everyone is safe, and we see that All Might and Tsukachi reunite, as Tsukachi thanks All Might for saving his sister, as All Might explains this is what he does as a hero, and that cries for help can be more motivating for him to act. As well as very much like in the manga, in the anime, we do have All Might almost revealing his secret to Tsukachi, as after that, we see that the scarred-faced villain number 6 will be preparing for a second assault on the heroes since his initial assault was a failure. And it is from here, before the attack, we get even more changes and additions between the anime and the manga. For instance, the news broadcast is cut down in the anime, and instead, we are focused more on All Might's statements to the press. Also, All Might hastily running off, transforming back into Toshinori, being found by Naomasa, and receiving a Captain Celebrity hoodie to wear from Kazuo are also not included in the anime. Alongside Makoto temporarily lamenting about needing to give away their merch and supplies as recovery resources while addressing the rest of the Naru Fest crew is also omitted from the anime. And finally, another omission in the anime is that in the manga, Naomasa introduces quote-unquote Toshinori to Eraserhead, Fat Gum, and Monica, while in the anime, the two just walk off in reference to Tsukachi and All Might. So yeah, that's a lot of small changes made, and those changes were needed to streamline the episode a lot more, as well as to put in more action in this episode with the 3 major action sequences that we got in the episode. Speaking on the action sequences, the second action sequence that we get in the episode begins. And with this sequence and the previous one and the one to come, they were all animated spectacularly. And we see even more of this great animation in this sequence as the anime is expanding upon the bomber villain's reformation and combination in the anime, as we see a lot more of the black sludgy pieces coming together and forming in the anime than we get in the manga. As well as the anime does add a small still frame of All Might and Aizawa to number 6's explanation, where he believes that those two together would have had the upper hand against one villain, but not the 200 plus bomber bat villains that are going to come out and break out of this newly reformed body. However, unlike in the manga, the anime actually shows these cluster bombs in a further proximity to the recovering civilians, while in the manga, they have the bomber villain clusters actually be close to the civilians. But we still get a very clean transformation sequence of All Might becoming his buff form as he releases a Nebraska smash that with one punch is able to defeat all of the cluster bombers in an instant, to the shock and chagrin of number 6, who does get a phone call from All For One calling and telling him that this is just who All Might is, a man who is a Deus Ex Machina for any situation because he is more or less peak of the human quirk society. And what's very interesting about what we're about to see is that we're about to get into the third and final action sequence of the episode. Because as we get to see number 6 responding to All For One about All Might, we see that the anime actually changes up a sequence of events where Knuckle Duster shoots number 6, and how in the manga, we actually get the setup and explanation for how Knuckle Duster found the location of number 6, as well as what he was planning on actually doing, which is actually shooting number 6 in the head. But as he's about to make the shot, a bird flies in front of his view, blocking it and causes him to shoot at the shoulder instead of at the head of number 6. And how this is very much different in the anime because we actually get the shocking shot of number 6 first, and then we get the explanation of it later. And it was most likely changed to give the viewers a shock and get them prepared for what is to come next. Because it's from here where we begin to approach the end of the episode. Because as we see that the shot is unfortunately not fatal, number 6, very much like in the manga, goes after Knuckle Duster with an amazing animation sequence as he's using the bird that blocked Knuckle Duster's shot as a stepping stone to get onto the same roof as Knuckle Duster. And this is where we get a lot of stuff revealed about number 6. Not only do we get his name, but we get a little bit more of his backstory, which is that we learn that he was the number 6 experiment, most likely of All For One, the creator of the instant villains and the villain factory. He also is the one that actually holds the stolen quirk of O'Clock, as well as we get what his name inspiration is and his philosophy on who he wants to be, which is the next O'Clock. Also, something else that I noticed, and this is coming after I've edited the video a little bit, is that I noticed how the anime very much extended the sequence between Knuckle Duster as well as number 6. And it is seen with them adding smaller details, such as extending the sequence where we are seeing a what if situation where All Might is evil, where they add more scenes to that moment, as well as they fully animate the sequence where number 6 is describing himself as being O'Clock, as we see O'Clock taking out multiple villains at once, which is extended in this sequence. Finally, something that I forgot to bring up is that when Knuckle Duster is explaining his entire plan, the anime actually adds a segment of a whole bunch of vials or tubes that would hold the bomber villains in. So that's a few things that I forgot to bring up and decided to bring up right now. Now back to our regularly scheduled breakdown and review. And after we get both Knuckle Duster as well as number 6 monologuing about who will take on the mantle of O'Clock, who is Knuckle Duster's mentee, it's Koichi, and how number 6 doesn't really care about being a hero or a villain, just O'Clock. But it's from here where we probably get my favorite scene in this entire episode. Because as number 6 is planning on landing an attack on Knuckle Duster, we get the best scene from the manga adapted, where number 6 is hearing Knuckle Duster give a thorough and better explanation of how overclock works and how it's based on not necessarily speed, but the perception of the user via their brain and viewing the world in slow motion, and how their reactions can differ from instant to instant, and that the more that they strain the brain using overclock, the more likely that they're going to fail. And because it's going at 300 times speed, he's listening all of this overworking overclock, which allows for Knuckle Duster to cause the building to explode and for them to fall down through the building. And when number 6 realizes his mistake, this is where Knuckle Duster drops a metaphorical and quite literal bomb on the building, making him fall towards the ground, as we get a very cool animation sequence of Knuckle Duster falling as well as O'Clock number 6 falling as well. Very much like in the manga, but the anime extending the sequence slightly with some great animation of Knuckle Duster shooting and blasting number 6's limb right before he reaches the ground and starts bombarding him with shots even more. And what's great about it being an anime in a visual medium is that we also get to see not only them falling, but we also get to see Knuckle Duster actually shoot the limbs of number 6. And going a little bit more in the past, the reasoning why he was unable to avoid all of this is because he overworked overclock, which the anime actually does some expansion upon by actually showing a visible representation of what O'Clock or overclock does inside of the brain of the user and the world that they are perceiving. And all of this is done so great, and I love it so much. But unfortunately, the episode and this sequence comes to an end because as Knuckle Duster realizes that because he didn't finish off number 6 at the first opportunity, he now has a second opportunity to take in number 6 and investigating him. And as he noticed that parts of his body have regenerated faster, this is where it's revealed that even though overclock is very much dependent on the brain, as long as you do brain damage to him, it cannot be activated. However, number 6 revealed that he put some of the bomber cells in his arm and causes his arm to explode as the episode ends. And yeah, this was pretty much an amazing episode of My Hero Academia Vigilantes. So yeah, this was a very great episode for My Hero Academia Vigilantes. From the animation, to the backstories, to the emotional highs of this episode, all of them were done amazingly in this episode. And most likely, we're gonna get a lot more of that in the final episode for this season, as well as a very cool cliffhanger that is going to lead into most likely the final season of My Hero Academia Vigilantes. But hey, that's all I really have to say for now. So let me ask you this. How did you feel about the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And do you think that Knuckle Duster will survive the explosion? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!